Hello, this is Dr. Anthony Delmond. We've been talking about prospecting, and when we finished last time, we were specifically talking about warm and cold calling and canvassing. Now I want to move on and talk about some other prospecting methods. As I mentioned before, cold canvassing is one of the most expensive methods of prospecting you can do. Now we're going to contrast that with probably the cheapest. Direct mail email prospecting reaches out to individuals who might be interested or might not be interested in the product, but it's not personal. So you're sending off an email, you're sending off mail. Mail is obviously more expensive than email, but you're going to reach a whole lot of people without any of that personal interaction that you had in the voice-to-voice or face-to-face of cold calling or canvassing. Again, it can reach more people more cheaply, but it lacks that persuasive power. There are a few common types of mailers. Email's the cheapest type, obviously, because you can costlessly send an infinite number of emails out. But a lot of them get caught in spam filters. People are real quick to just toss an email without thinking about it. There's nothing tangible about it. Direct form mailers, are frequently used, but a lot of times we see those as junk mail and people don't open them. And they're more costly since you have to print them and you have to mail them and put money on for stamps a lot of the time. A lot of times you can use these with a return slip. If you send a either email or a direct mailer to people and have them either go to a website or fill out a form and return it, you'll get a good list of prospects that are likely to, or leads rather, that are likely to turn into good qualified prospects. Handwritten notes have the most success, but they're very costly in terms of time and effort. I've seen over the last few years companies sending out a nickel or a dollar or something to kind of entice people to fill out a form, and that can be successful as well. People feel guilty about not filling that out if they take the money. Although every time I say that in class, people say they don't feel guilty. I think a lot of folks actually do. Let's move on to telemarketing. Like I said before, cold calling is a form of telemarketing, but it's only one small piece. Telemarketing is the whole entirety of inbound and outbound calls, lead generation, and direct sales efforts. It's usually associated with outsourcing. That's something that we've seen a lot of companies do because it's cheaper than having an in-house telemarketing team. They can hire a group outside and pay them a lot less. And they could read from a script that's developed by the company and change around what's said based on different cues that the potential buyers give them. Robocalls, we've all heard robocalls. This is where an automated system calls many receivers at the same time, and then based on people's responses, the calls get forwarded on to actual people. This nice little graphic walks through the specific way that these robocallers work. People generally don't like these, but again, this is a law of large numbers. If you call millions of people at once, you're bound to get a handful of them that will turn into prospective buyers or eventually clients. And this is usually done by a company outside of the company that's selling the product to at least generate leads, sometimes even qualify prospects. But you're not going to talk to somebody inside the company typically on a robocall. If customers hate this, why do businesses do it? Well, lower costs. It's a lot cheaper to hire somebody else to do your lead generation. It's lower opportunity cost for salespeople because you're not going to a bunch of unqualified people. You're going to actually have a pretty pared down list of leads, and it's going to be a lot easier for you to make your final sales. There's lower personal risk for rejection, so salespeople don't have as much call reluctance because they know they're not going to be talking to people who have no idea the call is coming, and that's just more profitable. But there are negative associations with telemarketing. One of the main ones is that they take away domestic jobs. This is kind of a questionable one because typically these are very low-paying jobs, And most people don't want these types of jobs. But that's not to say that there aren't jobs going overseas in the telemarketing industry that could be done over here. It would just be a lot more expensive for businesses. As far as customers, these calls are annoying and personal and privacy invading. We typically put spam filters on our phones to avoid them, and they don't really serve the interest of customers. They're really there to serve the interests of the businesses that are being hired to use these telemarketers. Another growing area is social selling, and this involves using social media in the sales and prospecting process. Social media marketing has become a really lucrative source of profits because it's nearly costless. We talked about the difference between advertising and publicity or public relations. This is on the public relations side, so it's low cost because all you have to do is hire the people to do it. You don't have to pay for the advertising or the marketing itself. So social media marketing is essentially just the use of social media in marketing a product to potential customers. A lot of businesses use it. Huge companies like Tyson and Bayer have teams that work on social media marketing for them. But a lot of smaller businesses and local farms use social media marketing too. When you advertise your presence at a farmer's market on Facebook Marketplace or Facebook, you're using social media marketing. And this is really changing the way that businesses prospect because you don't have to go out and find customers. The customers are more likely to find you. Digital media are also changing the way we network. Networking is extremely important. It's the process of developing and maintaining a network of social or professional connections. We're using LinkedIn and things like that to connect to professionals in our area. Networking opportunities exist everywhere you interact with potential customers. It also occurs where you interact with other people who might give you access to potential customers. So it's really important. When you're doing in-person networking, you should really take into account the best locations you can do that, the best individuals that you can work with, and how to conduct yourself while you're networking. So where does networking happen? I always ask this question in class, and I get a handful of answers, but the answer is everywhere. It can happen at the grocery store, it can happen at daycare, it can happen anywhere because you're always able to connect with people and figure out what they want, figure out if it's a good opportunity for a sale. But there are a few places that are particularly good for in-person networking. Trade shows and expos, conferences and workshops, and any sites where likely prospects are likely to congregate. Networking with everyone's not really efficient because you want to focus on the people that are going to be most useful for you. So the people that you want to target are those center of influence people, those who have the most personal or professional connections with your potential customer base. If you choose somebody who doesn't have a lot of connections, you're going to spend a lot of effort on them without being able to get a lot of payback from that effort you spend. If you go to people who have a lot of connections, even if they don't purchase from you, they might be able to put you in touch with a large additional network of people. So those center of influence people are very, very useful for building your network and increasing your sales. If you want to know how to network, well, obviously listening and sending positive signals are important, but there's a few important tips that you should keep in mind when you're networking in person. You want to remember your prospects' names. If you're talking to people and you're networking with people, you want to remember their names. People like hearing their names. You want to make sure that they remember your names. So you want to provide them with a business card. If you're at an expo, you might present them with a pamphlet or something that also has your information on it. You want to be a comfortable person to talk with. You don't want to be rigid. You want to seem like you're easy to talk to. So informal is usually better. People are less rigid when you're informal with them. You want to take notes immediately after you meet somebody because we forget so much. We talked about retention previously. If you're at an expo and you're meeting 100 people and you don't write anything down, you're going to remember certain pieces about certain people, and that's it. So you want to make sure you take pretty good notes, and if you can attach a name and a card or mental picture of each person. That's even better. And then you want to write thank you notes and reach out to people that you meet, even if only to touch base, because that makes sure that they remember who you are and that you met. Another thing we can do in our prospecting methods is to become an expert. This is where you get to know everything about the product that you're selling, the business that you're selling for, and the entire supply chain for your product. How do you do this? Well, you can cultivate an active social media presence. If you are actively engaged in presenting information on social media about your product, it is clear that you know a lot about it. You can become sort of an influencer. If you publish articles, this could be something formal, like we do in academia, but it could be very, very, very informal. You could write articles for local papers. They could be technical articles. They could just be informative articles. But the more you get your name out there associated with your product, the more of an expert you become in the eyes of the public. If you produce content routinely for customers to see how to use something, for example, a monthly webinar or a YouTube video, if you present your own newsletters, that can be very useful, and it shows that you care about your product and that you're very knowledgeable. You can act as a consultant, so giving people advice on how they can use the product and how they can better their business. And there are a lot of other ways as well. You just need to be creative as you're thinking about it. As we alluded to before, referrals are another way that you can make connections with potential prospects. Referrals involve information provided by current prospects about new potential prospects. So these are going to be people who either you are working with now or you have worked with in the past, and they're going to give you information about potential other buyers. A referral chain is the concept that referrals can lead to more referrals and so on. It's kind of a referendum on a salesperson's service or the company or the product. It's indicating that the current customer or prospect is happy enough that they want to give you information about other people that might be a likely buyer. So this is kind of a good indication that the salesperson is doing a good job. Since the salesperson is always attempting to simultaneously sell a product and the service that she's providing, this is considered a parallel sell or parallel sale. You're selling yourself and you're selling the product. Additionally, companies that have been around for a long time often have salespeople that have left or forgotten their clients. So one source of prospects or good leads is orphan customers, those whose salespeople have left the company. They're a limited source of revenue, but they're easy to approach. They already know the company. They already know the product unless you've changed. So it's a good way to go. Businesses that master new customer acquisitions, getting new customers, as well as retaining their old customers are said to be ambidextrous. They're focusing on the two sides of their customer base. And there are a handful of other prospecting methods. We'll talk about a few here. Sales leads clubs are groups of salespeople from similar businesses, but businesses that aren't competing. And they could share tips, leads, and prospects with each other because they're not competing with each other for business. Sharing content with legacy prospects is also useful. If you send them websites, news articles, you keep connecting with those prospects, they're eventually going to form a bond, and then you're likely to be able to sell to them or get a referral from them for another person down the road. And having a call list with those who are at the highest probability of buying, that's very useful, and if you work your way down that, you'll be more successful than if you just randomly choose leads to go with. All right, that's a good place to stop. When we come back, we'll talk about qualifying prospects.